Hello and welcome to the new episode of Freightender.org YouTube channel. And today we have a special guest, Pieter Kinds from Freightender. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Sebastian. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining. It's our mission here is to bring, all of those great technology that is built out there within specific needs in mind in most of the cases. And you've been in this market for nearly 9 years, as far as I know this, and we've been talking a couple of times in the past as well. Even though we never had actually a chance to cooperate, but I always was curious about your tool and the whole story actually, how you got to this space of freight technology and what's behind your venture that you started so long a time ago.
Yeah, well, happy to discuss and to tell more about that. Actually, it's a lot longer than 9 years that I'm in this phase. Before I was in freight tendering, I was in freight audit for 17 years, and out of that came freight tendering. Yeah, so. And I would say freight audit, definitely a very tough market, difficult to sell, takes a long time to implement, but definitely an interesting service. And within that space, I built up together with other people the company ControlPay from 2002 till 2020 when it was sold to Transporeon. And within ControlPay, we saw the need to build a tool which works better with rates in terms of logistics procurement, because we got rates that we needed to upload in the freight audit system. And then we saw a lot of things were missing, some business rules, some calculation rules. And we said, okay, maybe we should make a tool which makes it more convenient to capture all the specific nitty-gritty around rates in a sourcing platform. So we started out to build that in 2015, and 2016 we created a separate company, and eventually Freightender came out of that. So we started with a team of 5 or 6 people, purely development, and then right now we almost have 30 people in the company. And which is a very interesting journey, considering that that COVID, of course, changed a lot of the dynamics in how people are tendering, how often they tender, and where they tender, and so on. And the market has been very volatile. And
it was, it still is.
Yes, yeah, it is, and the complexity in logistics never really stopped. So what you see is that a lot more companies are leaning towards freight technology and using smarter ways to do things, because they don't have time to do it all manually anymore. So that's a good thing for freight technology in general, I would say. And we benefit from that as well.
Yeah, I think it is really good. I at the same time, I'm always shocked, what's the percentage of the adoption of the technology itself within the industry. And another day I joined the webinar of the DCSA about this particular topic, and the research that was done by FINA, it was like, PCOs are ready for adopting the technology at 90%, while freight forwarders at 40, 50. So, there's still, while the adoption itself is like 30. So I think there's a lot of space to actually drive it forward for you and for all of the other great ventures in the market. But Peter, maybe tell us a little bit more, about the Freightender itself. What's the problem that you are solving? It's this common startup question, even though I wouldn't say that you are the startup. I hate this word, actually.
No, I would say we're more a scale up as of now. But what you see is in our companies what a lot of companies actually solve, and that's taking out Excel of the process, out of the process, and that's what we do. And when you look at tendering, how it's been done by many companies is that you use Excel, obviously, and you need to use Excel because it's a very good tool to register all the data on the specific transport data. But in the end, you have to do many calculations. You have to gather data. You need to receive it in a good way, and you don't want to manage that anymore via your email box and copying and pasting data and do that a couple of times if you have multiple tender rounds. So you want to use a tool that does, let's say, the stupid work or the work that takes you a lot of time to automate that process. And that's exactly what we do. So we deliver efficiency in that process, but also visibility because everything is on one platform. You can share it with everybody. It doesn't sit in somebody's email box or somebody's working on all these comparisons and quotations by himself on his computer. No, it's all visible online, and the calculations and scenarios are being made real time as well. So that opens up a lot of possibilities of running more scenarios, doing more calculations, doing more comparisons, and come eventually to the right conclusion. Whereas when people are overworked or need to do a tender on the side and don't have time for it, they can never do that much work by themselves. So it is a lot of efficiency that we deliver. At the same time, also savings because you just run a better and cleaner tender with technology.
Yeah. So what modes do you support in terms of this global shipping?
All modes.
All modes. All right. So then it's only a matter of decision of the company doing this tender if they want to include everything, what they are focusing on, what's the, let's say, decision logic behind, just to be able to analyze it at the end.
Yeah, we typically see that companies start with one mode. They want to do ocean tender, and then at some point they say, well, we also want to do now the rope tender with you. Because obviously, as you know, in transportation, everything is fragmented. So the person responsible for ocean may not be responsible for roads, or you have a different geography where you are being introduced to, and they say, oh, we have these local, or we're running a parcel shipment tender in the US, and we want to use the platform there. So you can always grow inside larger companies because there's actually a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, and do you allow also the driving the comparisons in terms of the, let's say, side terms, like, the payment terms, the impact on the financial or the damage detention time and this kind of a things? That's, just to keep it closer to the apple and apple comparison, or?
Yeah, so some things go via, let's say, a questionnaire, because if you talk about payment terms, you don't really capture that on a lane level. But if you talk about transit times and lead times, that's definitely something that you capture in the tender itself. And that's also being used where you can make the comparison. Okay, I want to have something reasonably priced, but it also needs to be fast. Okay, and then you can make the comparison based on those criteria. But it's very comprehensive, so you can take everything into account. But that normally goes via the questionnaire that is being sent up front, also via the tool, and then you can make a selection and do a scorecard exercise based on that.
Yeah, sometimes I wasn't involved in this tendering for quite some time, honestly speaking, but I still remember this, long introductions to the tender itself, to all of the conditions, if you are, let's say, allowed to answer, like you're really cherry picking of some lanes, or you need to provide the answer to, specific amount, like as a minimum amount of the coverage of the tender, and this kind of topics it's always complex, time consuming, and when you think about the companies that are actually answering those tenders, it is quite heavy load, I would say, in terms of really going within the let's say tender management, getting the rates into that within the different areas and geographies, as you mentioned. So your tool itself, how does it solve? Whose problems does it solve? Is it like the only the party that is tendering, or does it support the parties that are participating as well?
Well, it's definitely a good point, because what many shippers don't realize is that they send their very specific tender profile or rate cards to the carriers, and these carriers just need to deal with it somehow. But then receive tenders from many different platforms, or no platforms, or homemade Excel files and so on, and they somehow need to decipher all this information and work on a deadline to make sure that they get the right rates on time to those to those shippers or the potential customers, and that's quite challenging. So when they use the tool, it's actually also very beneficial for them because we try to make it as simple as possible for them. Just very basic. Just here's the data. You can download it into Excel. You can upload it back into the platform. The platform will immediately tell you if something was missing and so on. So you must make it very simple for carriers because eventually they're in this process non-paying customers, I would say. And we also have a support function for that. Because it is a fact. I mean, these guys are working maybe on 10, 20 tenders on a certain in peak season on a certain week, and they all end on Friday, 5 o'clock. And so, and there are different processes that they have to deal with because every customer is different and has a different type of tender, and they ask maybe the same question but in a different way, and you need to answer that. And so it's quite stressful. And if you can make it easier by using a clean process, clean data, and a system which really is very fast in giving you feedback, then that's very helpful for the carriers.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. It is a struggle for every service provider, I think, to answer those, especially there are currently so many different formats. And as you mentioned, every single one is a different one. Then you need to engage, like Asia Pacific into that, and sometimes the Americas, and sometimes like a global team to some. It's like it's not a single man show to actually answer those questions or in the tenders and fill the rates. So I'm glad to hear that. But let's get back to the shippers themselves. So when you think about your product offering, how do you really evaluate its value for the customers? Is it making it faster or more precise, or it's like and if some of those how big the value is percentage wise or time wise?
Well, time wise, I think you could easily save over 50% spent on a tender. So that's a huge time saver.
It is, yeah.
So it's efficient in that sense. So it really automates all the process that you would normally do manually. In terms of real hard savings, I would say you gain an additional 5% in savings in running it via a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And typically we see that the return on investment is not less than 20 times. So it's big. I mean, the savings are really there. And it's once people have used it, it's just a no-brainer. They will never go back to using Excel and say, "Oh, we tried a tool, now we go back to using doing this process manually," because it's not a fun process. I mean, tendering by itself can be very beneficial, but if you have to do everything manually and deal with carriers that change Excel files completely, or have a lot of questions, or don't stick to the mandatory fields and they do things their own way and so on, and you cannot manage that via a tool, and you have to respond to it, and you have to use email with let's say 50 carriers, and you don't have a way to use Q&A function via a tool, or have the tool tell the carriers what's wrong in their quotes. Maybe they put the euro sign somewhere else, or they put letters instead of numbers, and you need to correct that manually with 50 carriers. That's just crazy. So if a system does that, it takes out already a lot of stuff.
Up front within the sales settings, but then you need to prepare this bloody file like super detailed.
Yes, but then also if what a lot of customers do, and this is a problem for forwarders when they are responding to air and ocean tenders, is that they get locked Excel files. And because they are working on it quite heavily inside their company, those locked files are a problem as well.
Yes,
and,
they are. Yes, they are.
And BCOs obviously not often know this, and so it causes problems and so on. So.
True. Right, so it sounds exciting. I think the problem itself, it is unbelievable. It is still existing to that extent, I would say.
Because, it is strange because this is the tender process is like this ritual that comes back every year. I mean, for ocean and air for sure, and road often as well. So why is it not already that efficient? Why is it not standard? Why is still everybody doing their own way of running tenders? So that's an interesting question, but I have
Yeah,
no answer to
it
that.
is. It is the interesting question. I think we might ask it, out loud under some post and actually get some of the answers to that. But it won't drive the full picture for sure. It's like it's
Yeah.
impossible. This fragmentation in this space is I think it is the biggest, right? Is when you think about how many shippers there are in the globe. This number is by far bigger than the freight forwarders, which is already massive. And when you multiply all of that within the different ways of doing things, that all of the actors, you just get to big numbers to have a standard today.
Yeah.
But yeah, Peter, it's been more than 9 years then, including the whole story behind. But given the Freightender time, it's been a long process itself to actually work on this. So did you have any major evolution of the product that you thought that was something was heading different way, and then you had to, I wouldn't say pivot, but just change the direction and where you were heading?
Yeah, so I think there are no major, let's say, changes, but there are a lot of small pivots. So when you look at, for example, a pricing model, when you start out, you don't really know what is the correct pricing, how you should price the product, what makes
Mm.
sense. So you need to test it out and then tweak it. Is it too cheap? Is it too expensive? Maybe in this case it's too cheap. There it's too expensive. This doesn't make sense. Yes, for this customer, it would make sense to have such a structure, but for the other customer, it would be this. So that takes a long time, I would say. But in terms of product, we came into a market where we already had a quite fierce competition. So you need to
Mm.
catch up with the competition as well and create the feature to get to a level where you at least have the same features or very similar,
Yeah.
and then try to go beyond that. And that's a challenge. So, and it also takes time. I mean, it's not difficult to build those features, but it takes a lot of time and knowledge. And you see over time that the knowledge you gain with working with customers, and that's something that you put in back into your tool, and that makes the tool
Mm.
eventually more valuable.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. It's like, this input that you can get by actually getting people into, let's say, co-building or giving you the really specific feedback. It's super powerful. And this is something that is actually building this uniqueness, right? It's like, in terms of the features that you have at the end against your competition.
Yeah.
I'm curious because you've mentioned, this a lot of feedback. So you're basically learning, about all of those outliers, different ways of doing it. So today, is it like a specific, let's say, it's dominating standard that you are using, or it is a flexible to all of the different approaches that your customers has?
Yeah, I think flexibility is the key word, because you need to be able to cater to different ways of doing tenders. Like I just said, the way companies are doing tenders, everybody does it in a slightly different way
Yeah.
and have different focus points. So you need to build that into the tool that you can accommodate that. And for some people, some features are not important at all, and for others, they're very much into that specific feature. So,
Mm.
and that has to do with the way they allocate their business, the way they nominate the business, the way they deal with the risks with the different carriers and so on. A partnership approach as well, or just
Mm.
is it paper packaging? Okay, that's hardcore price. Is it pharma? Completely different. Is it air freight
Yeah.
for semiconductor? Okay, and it's service and it's a lot of money involved. So every company in that sense also have their uniqueness in how they approach the market and how they work with their providers.
Mm. Just out of the curiosity, and it's like, we've been hearing it a lot lately because of the two factors, like Gemini, meaning a new cooperation between Maersk and Hapag, but also, DSV acquiring Schenker. And what I want to ask about you is, do you support also this kind of a diversification in terms of the cooperation with different parties? So on the carriers example, most of the companies I know, they wouldn't like to have too much load on a single vessel. and then they put a lot of efforts to actually have a right pool of their service providers, to diversify the risk of having the same load and the same vessel, to their, let's say, selling market. And it's been a huge thing, especially when you think about, how this market is changing. And they were, diversifying between Hapag and Maersk because it was separate. And now it is going to be the same from February on. So, they have these puzzles to really play with once again. And it's changing the landscape. It's changing probably also the way that they need to put it into the tendering process somewhere, now, or should I say Q4. Do you hear it as well from the customers?
Well, what you see is that especially when you get to ocean, there's often a lot more to it in terms of what is your strategy, how are you going to approach this? So you either have this in-house knowledge, or you rely on outside knowledge. So we work, for example, closely with Drury Maritime Consultants in London. We do all the tendering with them for their customers. And what you see is that they have a lot of services around this, especially advice. What is the impact of the Gemini cooperation or partnership and so on, those kind of things. And that's what you see all the time in ocean, that there are all the time these typical things that you need to think, okay, what is the impact going to be in the short term, long term, and or a strike, or the war here, war there, and it's ongoing. So you almost need to rely on outside people to give you that specific knowledge, because as a shipper, you cannot keep up with this unless you're fully dedicated to this.
Yeah.
So, and it's not something that we do per se. I mean, we provide the mechanics of running a tender, but we don't keep all this knowledge. But yeah, obviously for customers, this is a thing to take into account while they're doing a tender.
Yeah, I believe so, and it's actually a good way forward. I think that you are not trying to, to build everything in house. It's such a huge market with so many, really focused professionals on the specific topics that's then actually applying their expertise on top of the service. To me, it's very compelling. All right, Peter. So we're heading as a freight tender. What's the plan for next year's?
Yes. So that actually follows the point you just made. We don't want to do everything around us, because there's so much that you can do. So we're focused at growing our business. We do want to be the leading provider in logistics procurement in the broadest sense. So we have developed a rate management platform where you can manage all the rates together with carriers and integrate that with other platforms. And at the same time, we also have a tender management platform for forwarders where they can manage their incoming tenders and price it very actively and so on. So what that means for us is that we are already in the wider logistics procurement space. And what you see is that in our business, a lot of companies that 5 years ago would not be looking for a system, they are now looking for a system. So smaller companies, let's say, or consultants or 4PLs. And the market in that sense is very large. So we see a very good growth in that. And then at some point, we are just being opportunistic. Maybe we can develop another tool at some point. We are now integrating with the CO2 calculation providers, because obviously that makes sense. We are integrating with Drury.
It's one of the decision factors, right? It is growing.
Yeah, so it's definitely growing, and you see that in general, logistics procurement in that sense is really changing. So you add more partnerships, APIs, information to enrich the tender experience, but at the same time, we want to be doing what we are doing and do more of it. And do it better. So we're always building new functionalities, new features, because, that's just the way it is. That's just how software works. It never stops. But it's very hard to look down the road further than, let's say, 2 years and say you want to be there or there. If you just keep going and say, okay, we want to be the best in logistics procurement, that's a very broad statement, but it already
it is
allows you to say, okay, then you must invest in your product and you must listen to your customers. And then when you do that, other customers also or other companies also get interested, and they want to see what you have, and they may become a customer. So that's a natural way of growing. But maybe at some point we will do acquisitions in our direct area where it would make sense. But that's maybe further down the road.
Yeah, I think you have this agility of actually answering the market needs, and when I think about it, it is slightly connected with your, let's say, shareholding structure. You've been very vocal about bootstrapping the companies, not really excited about getting the external capital from the venture funds, and we've never talked about it, but I assume that's the way the Freightender is built, right?
Yeah.
All right.
No, absolutely. So I'm 100% owner of the company, so there are no outside investors. And when you look at venture capital in logistics, I find that the problem with that is that they don't understand logistics, first of all, and they basically tie you down to a certain, let's say, North Star or big goal that you need to go after.
Yeah.
Like I said, you need to pivot. If you have a direction, you need to change that direction. And what venture capital companies don't do is look at other things in this area because you want to be opportunistic, or you are in the logistics space and you see things are changing. But they just double down, put a lot of people, money into one direction, and that's how it is going to be. And that was the investor thesis. That is what decided with the board. So we're just going to dump a lot of money into one direction. We're not going to look at anything else, and we can go for a very long time in the wrong direction because we can finance it. Yeah. And if there are things, and when you're bootstrapped, you cannot do this. So you need to be careful about your steps. You need to, every time you need to think, okay, does this make sense? Yes, it makes sense. At the same time, when you grow a bit, you can say, well, it doesn't give us any money, but we keep on developing it because it's going to be interesting at some point. Now, in venture capital, that's not a way to fast money. They want to double down. They want to throw money at it and get the valuation in order to sell it. And where we say we want to be stronger. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a trap. It is a dangerous trap. And we've seen a lot of this in last years with actually companies becoming, the hostages of the promises that they gave to the investors, which is, delivering, terrible results, I would say. And so definitely there's a trap on that. But because of that, you have this agility to actually hear, the feedback and acting towards something that it makes sense for you. But you made me interested about this tool for the carriers to answer the tenders. Would it be correct? Because how I understood that today there's let's say shippers who have their tool for the Freightender.com that they start a tender. Now the carriers are just invited into that and can download this Excel file, they share and work on that. And what you see in the future is that the other side is going to have their own, let's say, develop features to actually be more efficient on that. Doesn't matter if the tender was launched on your platform or not. They can always pull it in and just work internally within all stakeholders that they have, within strategies that they have on the certain lanes or services and so on.
Yeah, so this is already live today. We're already doing this since 2018.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't know about it.
Yeah, no problem. But it's a niche. It's a very much niche product. But it's very necessary.
It's scary that it's a niche, given given what I know about how big struggle that is. It's unbelievable that it's still a niche.
Yeah, well, that's indeed true because when you look at tender management, those people are really struggling. They have a lot of stress. They have deadlines. They have people internally from account management, sales, trade lane management. Everybody is like on them.
Huge.
And so you receive a tender, and then you need to send it out to people around the world, your colleagues, for all kinds of pricing and so on. And it goes via email. and you don't have any overview of when you have 50 colleagues around the world that need to come back with pricing on time, and you need to have calls, use
Yeah,
SharePoint
and you
at
start
best.
chasing last minute because that's the time that you found out that there are like 4 of them missing and they are in different time
Yes,
zones. That's a
and
disaster.
there
I know that
are
from my own
changes,
experience.
and so you get changes as well, or updates on the tender from the customer, which also need to go. So it's just a very painful process, and especially when you have many tenders going on. So we build a platform where pricing, where you have the same visibility as in a regular tender. So you basically are launching a tender inside the organization, and you have full visibility on who is doing what. But also you can upload pricing automatically, so you can connect a database to it. So a tender comes in, it can automatically fetch, let's say, your selling rates that you have in another system, and
Mm.
that's very powerful. So it makes the process of answering to tenders much faster, and get a better grip on the internal organization. And and we see a big a pickup on that with forwarders. But I would also say that selling to forwarders is not easy. It is picking
Mm.
up now, and maybe that to your post of this morning. Um, but in the past they have been very slow to adapt to this. Also because I think tender management is now a more prominent department in forwarders than it was a couple of years ago.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it is growing. You know, everybody's looking for this kind of a stability to have certain
Yeah,
volumes contracted for a longer period of time because it is like kind of a baseline for everyone at the end. So
yeah.
yeah. So, Peter, last question. You know, because being cautious of time today, what would be your advice to other entrepreneurs working in this space, but maybe also in the different areas in terms of the segments of the industry?
Yeah, I would say that if you want to start in logistics, as with a startup, and you don't have logistics experience, then don't go into it.
Better not.
And no. You don't know what you're doing. It's better stay out of it, because you're gonna pay a lot of learning money, and that's not worth it. Because it's gonna be a long haul. Because it's tough. It's a tough market, and it takes time to convince people and to get traction. And problems that you think are problems may not be problems, and some things that are very small may be big problems. But you don't look at it because you don't understand the market. So,
Yeah,
and we have seen that in many companies. I
with
think.
it.
And the second part is that I would, at all costs, avoid venture capital. I would rather see companies or entrepreneurs going to, let's say, people in the market that have some money, business angels, angel investors, or people that understand how tough logistics is.
Yeah,
So they would say, okay, yeah, we definitely think that this concept is interesting. We give you money, you need to do it, and we're not going to tell you how you need to do it. We're not going to, let's say, completely
yeah,
overshadow you and going to make it our business because we want to sell in 5 years. No, we want to invest in you, and we believe that you can make a valuable business that at some point will be interesting for us as investors. But you have to take a back seat because venture capital is just taking over and is just destroying it, basically.
yeah. I think we've seen a lot of examples of this kind of let's say stories that ended very badly in some of the cases. Peter,
Yeah.
thank you very much for today. You know, I think that probably in the future we will have a broader chat about some of the topics. Yeah, it was a pleasure having you in today's show.
Yeah, Sebastian, it was great to be here, and I really enjoyed it as well. Thanks.